Sandbrook's Brewery, Wandle, best bitter.
And remember, life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. I've got one here from the Sandbrook's Brewery, and they're from London, and I like what they do. I've recently reviewed they have another premium best bitter, and that's called Junction, and that was really good. I really enjoyed that, and I made it my mission after that to try this Wandle stuff out, and nowhere could you buy it apart from the brewery. But I didn't want to go direct to the brewery. I want to try these ales, but I don't want to buy in bulk, because if I don't like it, I'm stuck with a load of shit beer. However, I managed to get this, I think, from Beers of Europe, and what I do like about this is obviously they're a London brewer, but they know what they're doing. And that was borne out in the Junction Best Bitter. I really was impressed with that. And what I like about this lot is, yeah, they're a modern brewer. They've only been going since 2008, but they're doing traditional British styles. They have no compunction about brewing them at all. And in an age where craft beer has more or less taken over, they've sort of bucked the trend a little bit. But there's a downside. They're from South London, and you know my views on South London. Saw it off. Give it to the French.
Bitch, you Peruvian, punch you!
That's what I think of South London. Anyway, the brewery was based in a place called Battersea, which is in South London, and I'm sure I used to go past it on the train every day into work, because where I am in Kent, I have to go through to Victoria in London. Well, when I was working, I'm working from home now, but when I had to travel into London from Kent, Victoria was the place where the train's destination was. That's where the train terminated. And it's only when I saw a photo of the brewery, I just thought, I've been looking at that every day, not realising that it was a brewery. They were originally going to stay in Battersea, but the lease ran out on their place, so they had to find a new location. And this is where it gets interesting, because they were approached to open up a brewery on the site of the old Young's Brewery. And it was like they wanted it to be, and I think for the life of me, I can't work out. It may be the council, I'm not sure. But Wandsworth Council wanted to keep that as a heritage site for brewing, because that's where the Young's Brewery was. And even though it wasn't established as a brewery back then, there's been brewing going on there since the 16th century. And they wanted to keep that tradition of the site being used for brewing. So the Sandbrook's Brewery have moved in there, but what's really interesting is it's on the site of the old Young's Brewery, because Young's used to be based in Wandsworth. They were one of the big London brewers. They had a lot of pubs. I think they closed in 2006. They got taken over by Marston's. Marston's are still brewing them, and if you're interested in Young's beer, I did a review of the Young's Chocolate Stout, which really impressed me. That's one of Marston's best beers, in my opinion. They've obviously taken the recipe, but it would appear they haven't fucked about with it too much, and that is a quality Marston's beer, originally brewed by Young's. But anyway, we're reviewing Wandle, and as I say, it's a best bitter, which is unusual because the Junction was a best bitter as well. That was classed as a premium best bitter, but this stuff is their flagship beer. So that's interesting. It's the first beer they brewed, so let's see how good this really is. Right, 500ml bottle, 3.8%. Very good session strength, that is. The IBUs on this are 30, which is about right for a bitter. You know, anything sort of under that, you start going into lager territory. That's what the IBUs are sort of, they're supposed to be used in context. So if you've got a lager that's 35, that's going to be on the bitter side. If you've got a bitter that's around 30, it's going to be slightly sweeter from my experience, but it could be, you know, it could be different. Who knows? The proof really is in the tasting. As they say on the bottle, this is brewed in London, and the Wandle, or the name Wandle, it comes from the River Wandle, and they've sort of alluded to that on the label with it being blue, and there's some lines there. But it's taken its name from that river, and that really is all about the beer. The malts in this are Maris Otter, which is a great malt, especially for these British type of beers. It's known as the Rolls Royce of malts because it's expensive, but it is really good. It tastes great in these style of beers, and they use 3 different style of hops. They use Fuggles, they use Golding. 2 great British hops used in this style of beer, so that's perfect. And they've got the Boadicea, or Boudica, depends how you want to pronounce it, named after the Queen of the Iceni. And these hops are quite interesting because you do get quite a range of flavours, and it depends when you put the hops in, whether you dry hop it or whether you put it into the boil, you'll get different types of flavours, but they do range. Now, they are quite resinous if you put them in with the boil, and they're also known to give off flavours of fresh cut grass if it's dry hopped, floral notes, and also sort of orchard type fruits like apple and pear, etc. So that's an interesting hop to use. They don't say whether they've used it for dry hopping or the whirlpool or how they've done it, but we are where we are with this beer, so let's get it open. Let's see what's going on. Right, get ye oldie cap lifter out. The cap is just plain black, nothing to see there. I'm collecting all the plain claps. Fucking hell. I'm collecting all the plain caps. There's a local artist around the corner, and he makes some absolutely stunning pieces of art. He uses cans, he uses metal work, but he's doing something with bottles, and he asked if I've got any spare bottle caps. I have. I want to keep the patterned ones, but the ones that haven't got any patterns, there's no point in me keeping, so I'm going to give them all to him. Be intrigued to see what he's going to make with that. Anyway, let's get back to the beer. Let's get it into the glass. This is about cellar temperature. I think it's quite cold out there. Well, this looks like it's very, very carbonated. And if that head dissipates, that could be a problem. Is it, or is it not? No, that's not too bad. I thought that was going to die on its arse. What are we getting on the nose? I really am getting them orchard fruits like apple and pear. There's some earthiness to it. I can almost taste the finish on it from the aroma. I can see there's going to be like an earthy and spicy bitter finish from the Fuggles hops that have gone into this, and the Goldings as well. But it does smell like a typical British bitter. And I need to give this a bit of an aggressive pour because the head's dying on its arse. There it is in the glass. That looks like a nice medium to dark amber colour, 1 finger white head, foamy white head. Slightly cloudy. That's not, yeah, that is slightly cloudy, which is interesting. And there's light carbonation. Interesting. Let's get it down the hatch. Bottoms up. Not bad. Finish is Slightly more earthy than spicy. Not as bitter as I thought it was going to be. And there's a fair amount of biscuit malt in there. But them Boadicea hops I can sort of taste, because there is like an apple and pear. Now I know apple is an off flavour, but it's not that type of apple flavour. This is mixed in with like sweetish pear, if you like. It's not bad. I will say it's not as flavoursome as the Junction Best Bitter, or the Premium Best Bitter. But this is a solid session bitter, in my opinion. Does taste British, definitely. You wouldn't mistake this for any other style. Quite nice. There's a biscuit malt finish, a bit of earthiness, and a little touch of spice. The spice isn't big on the finish at all. And to be honest, it is bitter, but it's not that bitter, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's quite nice. It's not outstanding, I will say that. It didn't bowl me over like the Junction did, but I can see the appeal, because it's got, I wouldn't say neutral flavours, that would sound like it's flavourless, but everything's in balance, and there's nothing in there that you'd get tired of drinking. It's just, it reminds me of the, all the good session ales or session bitters that you can get out there, and I could quite easily drink this all night. There's nothing in there that would ring alarm bells and make me get tired of it. It's quite nice, I have to say. There's no nasties. The body is quite nice on it too. It's quite sort of full bodied on it as well, and you wouldn't say it's 3.8%, but it slips down very nicely indeed. And yeah, I like that. It's good, not massive on flavour, but it's one of them ones that you could keep necking, and if it was stored right, you could just drink and drink and drink. Now I can't imagine what this would be like on draft, but if it's anything like the bottle, then yeah, I have absolutely no complaints about this whatsoever. It's 3.8%, so you could quite happily drink this till it comes out your ear holes. And they do, being their flagship beer, they do supply this to a lot of the local pubs. And I do recall that somebody on the Junction review put up in the comments that I should try this stuff. And I was going to try it anyway, but when they said it's really good on draft, I thought, well, I've got to try it now. And I have to say, no complaints whatsoever. So what's the verdict on Wandle Best Bitter? Yeah, it's nice. It's one of them ones where the flavours aren't massive. It will not bowl you over, but it goes down very nicely indeed. And there's no nasty flavours in it. And it's so much better than something that Marston's would come up with. It just tastes like it's that they actually care about what they're brewing. Oh, little bit of grassy notes and herbal notes on there now. Not big, again. Just perfectly in balance with it all. I really like it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And comparing it to, say, another similar sort of beer. Well, the Junction I thought was better. That was a really good ale for me, and it was more flavoursome, slightly stronger in the ABV, but still quite sessionable, and it did what it was supposed to do. When you talk about session ales, you don't really want massive flavours on session beers. You want a beer that's going to go down reasonably well. It's got to have some flavour. The ABV has got to be quite low, but you don't want massive malt. You don't want real hot bitterness, because believe me, and I've tried it as well, when you're drinking pints and pints, you want a beer that's just gonna slip down, and it's gonna be, you know, when you're out all day, you're not going to get tired of it. There's not going to be flavours that you think, oh, I've had too much of this, I need to go on to something else. I would be perfectly happy drinking, you know, 6 or 7 pints of that on a session, and I wouldn't get bored with it at all. That's really nice. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. Definitely recommend it. And that's 2 good beers, and you know, they're carrying on that tradition of brewing on the Young site, and I like the 2 beers that they've done so far. I may have to investigate them further. They do a few other beers I wouldn't mind trying. They do a pale ale, they do a porter, and I want to try them 2 out, because the other 2 I've tried are quite good. So I want to try them 2 out as well, just to see how, you know, how good they are. That's the mark of a good brewery. Anyway, that for me is an 8 out of 10. I definitely recommend it. Get it on Beers of Europe, get it direct from the brewery. They do these in mini kegs if you want, and they're open till Christmas Eve. So there you go. And remember, beer is working class champagne.